So I told myself I was not going to make another video about this bike right here until it actually came out. Well, I lied. Alright everybody, what is up? What is up? As always, thanks for stopping by to another video today. It's Eric here at the Moto Jawn, and I'm excited for this one because, as you guys know, obviously I'm a big Sportster fan, and as most of you probably already know by now, Harley has released a little bit of a teaser for what we know is going to be the new Harley Sportster. So obviously they released the Sportster S, not so much what we know as a traditional looking Sportster, really kind of radical type styling, but everybody already knows all about that one. We don't need to discuss that. What I'm really interested in is talking about the teaser and what we think is going to be upcoming for this new Sportster model. So obviously I have a pretty big vested interest in this bike, being such a big Sportster fan, riding a Sportster. You know, some of the last Evolution Motor Sportsters are out there now. We're left with the Iron 883, the 48. Obviously, I have my Iron 1200. And being such a big fan of those, I'm excited to see the evolution of this bike, of what we know it, how it's going to change, how it's going to evolve with the Revolution Max motor. So I'm excited to talk about this one today. We're going to dive into how we got here, what we know about the bike so far, what we don't know, and some of my predictions of what we're going to see with some of those items that we don't know yet. So of course, before we get started, let me know what you think about the teasers and the images so far. A lot of this has been leaked already. Let me know what you think and some of the predictions are for this bike, what it's going to weigh, what it's going to cost, what the power is going to be. Drop some of those comments down there. Let me know some of your predictions down in the comments of what you think we're going to see on the 12th of April when Harley does this full release of this new Sportster. So how did we get to where we are right now with this new model of this new looking Sportster that's coming out? Well, back in the fall of 2020, almost 2 years ago now at this point, I found this image right here on an R&D email, like a research and development email from Harley, going through a lot of different looking bikes, you know, asking which one do you prefer, the style and the look, this or that, this or that. It was going through, it had all these different images of this Sportster right here. And again, this was almost 2 years ago now at this point. Everybody's pretty familiar with this picture at this point. I think this was some of the first images that we started to see of a potential new Sportster with the Revolution Max engine in it. And so when I was going through that survey, I was very intrigued by this. I'm like, this looks like a Sportster. This looks like something that's going to be coming out here at some point in the future, but at that time we weren't 100% sure. The image was starting to float around the internet. When I saw the image on that survey, I immediately kind of took a screenshot of that and I was like, I got to make a video of this right now. I got to see if anyone else has seen that. I got to see if anybody knows anything about this. So I put that video out on September 29th of 2020. I kind of like to think I was the first person to put it out there, give myself a pat on the back. But I don't know, just kidding. Anyways, I think I might have been the first person to put it out there. But anyways, it started to make its way around the internet of a potential new model of a Sportster with the Revolution Max engine. Like I said, everyone's familiar with this picture at this point. So then fast forward the timeline a little bit to July of 2021, where Harley does the release of the new Sportster S. Of course, that whole presentation obviously really heavily focused on the Sportster S. They launched it. It was time to present that bike, Revolution Max engine, everything that we were going to call the Sportster S. But obviously, as we know, we started to see some more snippets of this other potential redesigned Sportster with the Rev Max engine as well. So, of course, we started to see some of these images here that they played at the very end of that presentation, where we got to see a good look at the front of the bike, where we see bars matching the Sportster look, probably bars looking like an 883. We saw the peanut tank in the front, and then of course you see the windscreen up there in the front as well. Then of course it slides back to the rear of the bike, where we see the rear exposed shocks also aligning with the Sportster, and then it slides up to the middle of the bike, where we see a little bit of the Revolution Max engine with the 2-into-1 pipe coming down around the casing. So that, what we saw at the end of the Sportster S video, was very in line with that picture from back in fall of 2020. Very identical, a lot of similarities. That pretty much confirmed that we were at some point going to get this more classic looking Sportster with the Revolution Max engine in it. So now fast forward up to the present time, we see Harley release another trailer letting us know that they're going to drop the bike on April 4th, 2022. And this is where we start to get more images of the bike. So at this point, we've actually really seen a lot of the bike, but this really just kind of confirms a lot of the things that we've already seen so far. Of course, we don't get a whole lot new to confirm within this teaser. They're going to still keep it pretty secretive at this point, but you do start to see a little bit of the rear of the tank going into the seat there. You see a little bit of a different graphic than what we had seen on some of those leaked images before as well. From that image also, it does look like there's probably going to be a new seat on there, probably specific to this new redesigned frame, specifically to the new Sportster. And then it does move into a little bit of a silhouette of the bike, of course, where you can kind of see the outline. Still, it's very dark. You can't see a whole lot there, but of course it does confirm some of the things like some of the classic Sportster lines. You see a little bit of the mag wheels. It confirms the single disc brake up front there that you can see. And then obviously, of course, we've got another shot here of a guy doing a little bit of welding on the exhaust there. It looks like it's showing him switching that out, because obviously with the title of this, Instrument of Expression, they're really kind of playing off of that whole idea, that whole theory of the Sportster being so customizable. I think as they kind of renew this bike a little bit, upgrade it, refresh it, they still want to keep a little bit of that aspect to the Sportster, where they want to keep it very customizable. That's always been one of the big selling points of the Sportster. So you see a guy here doing a little bit of like a welding job, whatever, kind of changing out the exhaust a little bit. So then again, of course, they finish off with a few more shots here. You get a couple more shots of the cased-in Revolution Max engine here. We got another little shot of a little bit of the tank, a little bit of the air cleaner there. It does have that circular looking air cleaner, which is also very recognizable to the Sportsters. So that's where we are with the timeline at this point. Of course, that's how we got to here. We've got that original image from back in 2020. We had some more little teasers in the Sportster S release. And then, of course, we've got the teaser that just popped up from Harley, letting us know that they're going to announce the bike on April 12th. So that's what we know so far. I think we know a good amount of what this bike is going to look like. There's not a whole lot else to it. We know it's going to have some of the classic lines, the peanut tank, the rear shock, single disc brake. But what are some of the things that we don't know that they're going to have to kind of tell us on that release? Well, the first one is, of course, the engine. There's a lot of speculation. There's a lot of rumor and thought that it's going to be a 975cc Revolution Max engine. I do agree with that. I know they kind of teased that a little bit with the Bronx that they were kind of thinking about releasing there. We think that had a 975cc engine in it. They could be working on something else. We don't fully know at this point, but this is my first unknown, my first prediction here. I think this is going to be the 975cc Revolution Max engine. Also, we don't currently know any specs as far as power is concerned at this point, so I'm going to go ahead with my prediction of 89 horsepower and 75 foot-pounds of torque. Next up, as we start to think about the weight of this bike, I think it's going to be a fairly light Harley model. I think it's going to be obviously lighter than the Evo Sportsters. I think it's going to be lighter than the Sportster S. I'm going to put this coming in at 475 pounds. I'll also be curious to see what some of the colors are that are going to be released with this. We can almost guarantee, since it's Harley, there's going to be a vivid black. I do think the red comes through from the teaser from the Sportster S video, and then from some of these images that we saw in the newest teaser, I think there's a gray mixed in there as well. So I'm thinking black, red, and gray are going to be 3 color options for this bike. Next up, the thing that I'm curious about is going to be the speedo. I don't think we're going to get the old style speedometers on this bike that the traditional Sportsters usually have. What I think Harley's going to do with this Sportster, of course, I don't think it's going to be too fancy either. I think they're going to take the digital speedometer that is currently on the Lowrider S117, not the ST, the one that's on the regular Lowrider S117, the new one that they just put in there. I believe that speedometer is going to be on this Sportster. Next up, what is the name of this bike going to be? Obviously, it looks like on the website, Harley has specifically called the Evos the Iron 883 and the 48. There's no mention of Sportster at this point in time on those two bikes. What are they going to call this? Are they just going to call it Sportster since there's a Sportster S and then they're going to scale back to the regular Sportster of Sportster? I don't know. That sounds kind of silly, but if you think about it, I have seen that they did trademark the name Nightster and 48X a few years ago, so those are 2 options. My prediction is this is going to be called Sportster 48X. I kind of like that name. I think that's the name that they're going to go with on this bike. And then finally, the big question overall is what is the price, what is the cost of this bike going to be? So if we think about it, I do think it's going to be more expensive than the Iron 883 and the 48. But of course probably not obviously as expensive as the Sportster S. So if we find a middle ground and a price where this bike fits in the lineup at this point in time, I am predicting and giving this bike a price of $12,799 MSRP. And so there you have it. Those are some of my predictions of what I think we're going to see with this bike. I'm excited to see this release next week. Of course, we will take some of this information, gather up another video, make some more content when we do finally have all the information, all the specs, stats, details, everything released on that. We'll put together another video. We'll see where I was right, where I was wrong. We'll also like to get some of your feedback out there. Once we know all the information on this bike, we want to hear from you guys as well out there, what you think of the bike and the release. So of course, we got about one more week to go on this thing, so I'll be excited to see that release and get everybody's feedback. But until then, make it a good one, guys. Make sure you ride safe out there. It's the Moto John. We'll see y'all on down the road. Peace.